there, my name is Efren Mamak. I am a Miles thesis student, and today I will be sharing you the content of my instructional material entitled English Writing Tips on the Go. This is actually designed for tertiary level students. It contains various topics about technical writing ideas that will help the learners to be knowledgeable and be able to carry out these learning tips in real-life situations such as in the field of business, academe, and public relations. This instructional material is aligned to learning patterns that will expound the learner's writing skills. Objectives. Number 1, we have to be able to know the steps in successful writing. Second, to be able to learn how to write a job application letter, to be able to determine the tips to outscore in a job interview. We also have to be able to acquire knowledge in designing a brochure. Of course, to be able to identify the tips in writing feasibility reports. We also have to be able to examine the structure of executive summary report and to be able to apply the types of figures of speech in writing, to be able to cite correct examples on common misused words and phrases, and finally, to be able to write a sample of minutes of meetings.
Steps in successful writing journey. The students are hereby given a free test. Instructions. Tell us your ideas about the steps in successful writing by filling out the given chart below. In the first column, write what you already know about the topic. In the second column, state what you also want to know. You may add additional rows if necessary.
Objectives. At the end of the lessons, you should be able to learn the steps in successful writing. Explain why such writing steps help you construct a comprehensive, coherent, and clear writing output. Discuss factors that must be considered in every steps in writing. Identify the reason why each writing steps are interrelated and overlap. Apply the concepts in successful writing through writing composition.
Lesson 1.1. 5 steps in successful writing. Introduction. To produce a quality writing output, a writer must apply a systematic approach to guide him well in the writing process. He needs also to consider his purpose and specific audience. Moreover, we need also to keep in mind that the steps in writing are interrelated and overlap because there are instances that you have to go back to previous steps or succeeding steps for the reasons of identifying reader's need and purpose, retracing, revising initial understanding, and the need to go back to gather further information. Number 1 step, preparation. And these are the goals that you need to accomplish in the preparation step. Number 1, establish your primary purpose. Number 2, assessing your audience and context. Number 3, determining the scope. Number 4, selecting the medium. Now let's proceed to the second step, research. It is a secret way that you can write any complex subject is to have a thorough understanding by conducting adequate research. Under research, we have methods of research. We have primary research and the secondary research. Third step, organization. To avoid incoherence of your material, you have to organize your information effectively by determining the best way to structure your ideas. Under organization step, we have methods of development, and the second one, outlining. The next step is writing. Then, revision. For this lesson, we have post-test instructions. In a whole sheet of paper, write a composition of at least 500 words about the impact of enhanced community quarantine due to COVID-19 in your locality by applying the steps in successful writing. 2. Create 5 groups. Each group is assigned to a particular task. Group 1 will think of a topic and will do the preparation writing stage. Group 2 will do further researching of the topic of Group 1. Group 3 will enhance the write-up by adhering to the organization writing step. Group 4 will then put all ideas into writing. And Group 5 will do the revision writing stage. Present your output in the class. Lesson number 2. Writing application letter. Activity 1. Photo analysis. Instructions. Analyze the photo and answer the following questions. What is an application letter? 2. What are the key points to include when writing an application letter?
Objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to define application letter, know the parts of an application letter, identify the key points when writing an application letter, evaluate content if the application letter to assure correct grammar, and of course, apply the learning in writing application letter to a sample application letter composition.
We have to consider that an application letter is also known as sales letter because you are actually marketing your skills, abilities, experiences, and knowledge. Thus, it has to be persuasive. 4 goals to do when writing application letter. It catches the reader's attention favorably by describing how your skills will contribute to the organization. 2. Explains which particular job interests you and why. 3. It convinces the reader that you are qualified for the job by highlighting and interpreting the particularly impressive qualifications in your resume. 4. It requests an interview. Structure of an application letter. Number 1. Opening. State how you know the job offering position or area. Be willing to write if the offering was referred to a company by an employee, a professor, or someone else. Show interest by stating your enthusiasm in the job. Number 2. Body. Show by giving examples that talk about your qualifications for the job. Be specific. You might include educational attainment, skills, and work experiences. Do not just tell readers that you are qualified. Show them by including examples and details. Next structure is closing. Finally, encourage the reader by requesting an interview. State completely your phone number or email address, and with a statement of goodwill or expressing gratitude. Double check to spot grammatical errors. For this lesson, we have application, instruction. Write a sample of application letter. Be sure to follow the guidelines being discussed. What to do in a job interview. Activity, role-playing, instructions. In a dyadic setup, perform a role-play about a job interview. One has to act as an interviewer and the other partner will act as an interviewee. Quick test. Number 1. What are the questions being asked by an interviewer? 2. How does an interviewee respond to the interview questions? Number 3. What are the typical gestures or proper postures to guarantee a successful interview?
Objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to define job interview, identify tips before, during, and after job interview, develop skills to be successful in a job interview, and learn ways to combat job interview stress or fears, and apply knowledge on job interview in a classroom setup.
You may experience a job interview in different ways, such as in person, by phone, or by teleconference, which can last 30 minutes, an hour, or more. Even though the typical number of interviewer is 1 or 2, but at times, a group of 4 or more might happen. Before the interview, research about the company's profile or activities to give you a comprehensive background. You can obtain information from any available sources such as from current employees, the internet, the company's publications, and the like. Try to answer the following questions. What are the short-term and long-term occupational goals? Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? What are your major strengths and weaknesses? Do you work better with others or alone? How do you spend your free time? What accomplishment are you particularly proud of? Describe it. During the interview, for better impression, a good grooming is a must. Dress simply and conservatively. Avoid extremes in fragrance and cosmetics, and be well-groomed. Behavior. Express gratitude to the interviewer for keeping him waiting, but remain standing until you are offered a seat. Observe good posture. Turn your nervousness into alertness by responding quickly to interview questions. Refrain from jotting down notes extensively. Maintain eye contact. Responses. Avoid answering yes or no questions and say only what you must answer and then pause. If the interviewer overlooks important points, bring them up. However, let the interviewer mention salary first. Doing so yourself may indicate that you are more interested in the money than the work. Ask questions to communicate your interest in the job and company. Interviewers respond favorably to applicants who can communicate and present themselves well. Conclusion: you have to thank the interviewer for his or her time. Show that you are interested in the job. Reaffirm friendly contact with a firm handshake. After the interview, don't forget to note some pertinent information you have obtained, as it may help you in comparing job offers. Immediately, write and send a thank you message through a brief letter or an email to the interviewer. Guide content of the notes. For this lesson, we have a Posttest. Instructions: complete the data table by supplying necessary inputs. As observed, state common job interview mistakes and then what should be the right things to do or act under, before, during, and after a job interview. Lesson 4. Tips in designing a brochure. Activity 1. Photo analysis. Instructions: analyze the photo and answer the following questions. What can you infer out of looking at a given brochure image? Does it persuade you? In what aspect? 2. What are the key components in designing a brochure?
Objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to define a brochure, identify the two kinds of brochure, know tips in designing a brochure, learn the overall goal of a brochure, and apply the knowledge acquired through designing a brochure.
Brochures are printed publications that promote the products and services offered by a business, or that promote the image of a business or an organization, or by providing general or specific technical information important to a target audience. The goal of a brochure is to inform or to persuade or to do both. Types of brochures: sales brochures and informational brochure. Designing a brochure. Key points: determine the specific purpose of the brochure. Identify your target audience. Cover panel. The aim of a cover panel is to grab readers' attention. It should be visually appealing and must clearly identify the organization or product being promoted. The amount of text should be minimum. First inside panel. State the identity of the organization through writing headlines and readable content such as used in advertising. Subsequent panel. Describe the product or service with the reader's need in mind, clearly stating the benefits and solutions to problems that your product or service offers. Include relevant and accurate supporting facts and visuals. You might include testimonials to establish credibility. You may incorporate subheadings and bulleted lists to break up the text and highlight the key points. Final panel. In the final panel, be clear about the action you want the reader to take, such as calling to order the product or visiting a website or for more information. Design style and unity. Develop a style that unifies and complements the content of your brochure, and use it consistently throughout. Activity. Instructions. Design a type of brochure according to your choice by following the guidelines below. Lesson 5. Writing feasibility report. Activity. Biz meeting. Instructions. Divide the class into 2 groups to perform a business meeting role play. Every members of the group will collaborate among each other to come up with a business report about any product to launch. Assign a member to be the discussant.
Objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to know what feasibility report is, determine the content of a feasibility report, identify the steps in writing a feasibility report, and demonstrate skills in presenting a feasibility report in the class.
It is the primordial mindset of any businessman to know the success of any new product or service, purchasing equipment, etc. at first. To help them achieve these interests, they need to check a feasibility report. A feasibility report presents evidence about the practicality of a proposed project based on a specific criteria. A feasibility report is also known as a recommendation report, if it stresses specific steps that should be taken as a result of a study of a problem or an issue. These are the guidelines in writing a feasibility report. Format in writing feasibility report. Introduction. In this part, you have to state the purpose of the report, describes the circumstances that led to the report, and includes any pertinent background information. You may also include the scope of the report, any procedural methods used in the analysis of alternatives, and any limitations of the study. Body. The body of the report presents a detailed review of the alternatives for achieving the goals of the project. Examine each option according to specific criteria, such as cost and financing, availability of the staff, and other relevant requirements. Identifying the subsections with headings to guide readers. Conclusion. The conclusion interprets the available options and leads to one option as the best or most feasible. Recommendation. The recommendation section clearly presents the writer's or a team's opinion on which alternative best meets the criteria as summarized in the conclusion. Application. Instructions. Write a sample of a feasibility report about a product or service of a certain organization or company. Try to apply the guidelines and steps when constructing a feasibility report. Writing executive summary. Activity. Descending process. Instructions. Given the descending arrow below, list down the possible key points when writing an executive summary.
Objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to define an executive summary, learn the content of the executive summary, and know the guidelines when writing this kind of summary, and write an example of an executive summary.
By definition, an executive summary consolidates the principal points of a report or proposal. Apparently, executive summaries differ from abstract in that readers scan abstracts to decide whether to read the work in full. However, an executive summary may be the only section of a longer work read by many readers, so it must accurately and concisely represent the original document. Content of executive summary. Restate the document's purpose, scope, methods, findings, conclusions, and recommendations, as well as summarize how results were obtained or the reasons for the recommendations. Executive summaries tend to be about 10% of the length of the documents they summarize and generally follow the same sequence. These are the guidelines in writing executive summary. Application. Instructions. Write an example of an executive summary. You may take input from any researches or published journals. Be sure to follow the guidelines when writing an executive summary. Lesson 7. Figures of speech. Pre-test. Instructions. Given the following sentences, identify what figures of speech has been used. Analogy, hyperbole, metonyms, metaphors, personification, and simile. Write your answer on the space provided before each sentence. Objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to identify the functions of figures of speech, determine some types, and to know when to use the figures of speech, and of course to show mastery on the use of figure of speech through writing. A figure of speech is an imaginative expression that often compares two things that are basically not alike but have at least one thing in common. Figures of speech can clarify the unfamiliar by relating a new concept to one with which readers are familiar. Figures of speech also must be consistent to be effective. These are some of the figures of speech. Analogies are comparisons that show the ways in which two objects or concepts are similar, often used to make one of them easier to understand. Hyperboles are gross exaggerations used to achieve an effect or emphasis. Metaphors are figures of speech that point out similarities between two things by treating them as though they were the same thing. Metonyms are figures of speech that use one aspect of thing to represent it, such as blue for the sky and wheels for a car. Personification is a figure of speech that attributes human characteristics to non-human things or abstract ideas. Similes are direct comparison of two essentially unlike things, linking them with the word like or as. Avoid figures of speech in global communication and international correspondence because people in other cultures may translate figures of speech literally and may be confused by their meanings. Applications. Instructions. Analyze the given artwork below, then write a composition about your insights about it by employing some of the figures of speech. Lesson 8. Commonly misused words and phrases. Pretest. Instructions. Write a sentence on each of the following words and phrases. Some misused words and phrases. A lot. A lot is often incorrectly written as the word a lot. The phrase a lot is informal and normally should not be used in technical writing. Use many or numerous for estimates or give a specific number or amount. B. Absolutely. Absolutely means definitely, entirely, completely, or unquestionably. Avoid it as a redundant intensifier to mean very or much. C. Be sure to. The phrase be sure and is colloquial and unidiomatic when used for be sure to. D. Critic. A critic is a written or oral evaluation of something. Avoid using critic as a verb meaning criticize. In formal and scholarly writing, data is generally used as a plural, with datum as a singular form. Base your decision on whether your audience should consider the data as a single collection or as a group of individual facts. Whatever you decide, be sure that your pronouns and verbs agree in number with the selected usage. F. Each. When each is used as a subject, it takes a singular verb or pronoun. G. Figuratively or literally. Literally means actually and is often confused with figuratively, which means metaphorically. H. Principal or principal. Principal meaning an amount of money on which interest is earned or paid, or a chief official in a school or court proceeding. Is sometimes confused with principle, which means a basic truth or belief. I. Regardless. Always use regardless instead of the non-standard irregardless, which expresses a double negative. The prefix "ir" renders the base form negative, but regardless is already negative, meaning unmindful. J. Try to. The phrase try and is colloquial for try to. For technical writing, use try to. Application. Instruction. Write an essay consisting of at least 300 words about the topic Filipinos are resilient in times of hardships. Make sure to use the common words and phrases discussed. Lesson 9. Writing minutes of meeting. Activity. Role-playing. Instructions. In two groups, conduct a role-play. One group is designed to perform a school general assembly, while the other will do a business meeting. Each group should have at least 2 students to prepare minutes of meeting.
Objectives. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to define minutes of meetings, know the importance of minutes of meeting, determine the structure when writing a minutes of meeting, what to avoid, and of course be able to write the learnings of the said topic through an activity.
Minutes refers to the official records of the organizations and committees in their meetings. It is essential to settle disputes in the future, so it should be accurate, complete, and clear. When approved, minutes of meetings are official and can be used as evidence in legal proceedings. Rules in writing minutes of meeting. Keep your minutes brief and to the point, except for recording formally presented motions, which must be transcribed word for word. Summarize what occurs and paraphrase discussions. To keep the minutes concise, follow a set format and use headings for each major point discussed. Avoid adjectives and adverbs that suggest good or bad qualities. Minutes should be objective and impartial. If a member of the committee is to follow up on something and report back to the committee at its next meeting, clearly state the person's name and the responsibility he or she has accepted. This is what to include in preparing minutes of meeting. Application. Lesson Posttest. Letter A. In a paragraph of not more than 300 words, discuss the following. Number 1. Why minutes of meeting is important in an organization or companies in their meetings. Number 2. Illustrate the structure of minutes of meeting by citing an example. Lesson Posttest. Number 1. Knowledge and skills review. Identification. Write what is S on a space provided before each sentences. Number 2. Essay questions. Answer the following questions. Compare and contrast between Executive Summary Report and Feasibility Report. B. Discuss briefly the 5 steps in successful writing. C. Illustrate the parts of an application letter by showing an example. We also have performance tests. Produce a group brochure promoting the implications of obeying the government mandate, stay at home, as an application of enhanced community quarantine due to COVID-19 outbreak. Mechanics. Number 1. The class is divided into 3 groups. Number 2. Each group must brainstorm and discuss the contents of the brochure. Number 3. The brochure must be able to highlight the importance of staying at home. And number 4. Share the output in the class.
Due to COVID-19 outbreak, which happened to be a pandemic affecting more than 100 countries worldwide, the classroom meetings had been compromised. I believe that despite of the crisis that challenged all of us, we still remain thankful. It is because of our enduring fights, obedience to law, and of course, our spiritual faith. Learning is a continuous process. Despite of the enhanced community quarantine, which locally instructed us to stay at home, this ECQ provided us ample time to create this instructional material. And with this, I would like to thank our course professor Dr. Noemi Carion for her motivation and guidance in finishing this teaching guide. Thanks also to my colleagues for close communication regarding school updates and requirements. I am also grateful for the support of my family, and above all, I am also thanking our dear creator for giving me the strength and ability to finish this instructional material